Nick was talking about the crew. You have the families, of course, of these ferry victims, many of them parents of those young high school students, absolutely in anguish as they face a long road ahead when it comes to compensation for their loss. Hundreds of families' lives are now forever changed. So what about the legal route here? Maritime trial attorney Jack Hickey joins me from Miami, and Jack represents 20 passengers who were on board the Costa Concordia cruise line when that crashed off of Italy in 2012. So Jack, how does one determine liability in this disaster, specifically off of South Korea? Captain, crew, ferry company?
Well, you know, as far as civil liability, yes, the ferry company, but as far as criminal liability against this captain, that's really under the Korean law. International law doesn't really provide a very specific prohibition on the captain getting off the vessel before the vessel goes down or before all the other passengers. But you know, the captain is the master of the vessel. He's master and in charge of the safety of every single passenger on board. How can you administer your duties as master of all the safety of everybody without being there? And you have to be there. And what's interesting is in the Korean system, the legal system in Korea, it is a civil law system different from ours. They have judges making almost all the decisions, not juries. But in certain criminal cases since 2008, they have actually had advisory juries on certain criminal matters. It'll be interesting to see whether there's an advisory jury on the criminal case against the captain in this situation.
Do you think in a situation like this, I mean, we know what's happening with Costa Concordia, that a captain is on trial and could face prison for the rest of his life. But in this case, might this be something that takes the litigious route, be it civil or criminal, or might we see a settlement?
Well, you know, the criminal case, because frankly, there's been so much media attention, if I had to guess on the criminal side, they're going to be pretty harsh. It's not going to be a situation, if we had to guess, I don't think it's going to be a situation where there's going to be a quick plea on that side. If it were a plea, it would be certainly only if the captain agreed to a very stiff sentence. So that's, you know, criminally. Yeah. Civilly, it is, again, it's a different system from ours, and I think it's pretty clear, given the circumstances here and the lack of connection with the United States, for example, that the litigation is going to stay in Korea. And this, under the civil law system, there are schedules for compensation, and it will take some time, but the compensation just, you know, depends upon the formulas in the schedules.
I want to go back to a word you used at the top of that answer, harsh. South Korea's president likened the actions of the captain and crew to murder. When you talk about criminality in this kind of case, do you think murder, manslaughter charges could be likely in this scenario?
Well, you know, when you talk about murder, when you talk about taking somebody's life, you do talk about, you know, first degree, second degree, manslaughter, and down from there. This certainly could rise to a situation of manslaughter, which is really, the definition of that is not that he had premeditated intent to do bad things to people, to actually kill people, but that his actions were so grossly negligent that he had to have foreseen that bad things and, in fact, death would have come to people. And this may be a case like that, and where manslaughter is appropriate. And I say that because, you know, here we have a string of failures, not just one thing, but a string of failures, starting with the fact that they veered off course, being 3 hours late were the initial reports. Secondly is that third mate at the helm. In maybe a tricky, and the latest reports were that, you know, the vessel may have been in a tricky area navigationally speaking.
That's right. We don't know definitively. We don't know yet, but those were all the initial reports, which certainly leads to questions. You know, 9 people detained now, as we were hearing from our reporter in Jindo on the ground, saying they keep seeing these bodies wrapped in white sheets coming back to land. And you just think of the families. Jack Hickey, let's leave it there. Maritime trial attorney, thank you so much for joining me
Thank
and
you,
your
Brooke.
expertise. I really appreciate it.